Today we're going to be talking about the 10 principles of Burning Man. If you're familiar with the 10 principles themselves, you could probably skip to 2 or 3 minutes ahead. I'm just going to read them off here in the order that I have them written down on the board, then we'll go over them a little bit. Radical inclusion. Anyone may be a part of Burning Man. We welcome and respect the stranger. No prerequisites exist for participation in our community. Radical self-reliance. Burning Man encourages the individual to discover, exercise, and rely on his or her inner resources. Radical self-expression. Arises from the unique gifts of the individual. No one other than the individual or a collaborating group can determine its content. It is offered as a gift to others. In this spirit, the giver should respect the rights and the liberties of the recipient. Communal effort. Our community values creative cooperation and collaboration. We strive to produce, promote, and protect social networks, public spaces, works of art, and methods of communication that support such interactions. Civic responsibility. We value civil society. Community members who organize events should assume responsibility for public welfare and endeavor to communicate civic responsibilities to participants. They must also assume responsibility for conducting events in accordance with local, state, and federal laws. Gifting. Burning Man is devoted to acts of gift-giving. The value of a gift is unconditional. Gifting does not contemplate a return or an exchange for something of equal value. Decommodification. In order to preserve the spirit of giving, our community seeks to create social environments that are unmediated by commercial sponsorships, transactions, or advertising. We stand ready to protect our culture from such exploitation. We resist the substitution of consumption for participatory experience. Participation. Our community is committed to radically participatory ethic. We believe that transformative change, whether in the individual or in society, can only occur through the medium of deeply personal participation. We achieve this through doing. Everyone is invited to work. Everyone is invited to play. We make the world real through actions that open the heart. Immediacy. Immediate experience is, in many ways, the most important touchstone of value in our culture. We seek to overcome barriers that stand between us and a recognition of our inner selves and the reality of those around us. Participation in society in general, and contact with the natural world exceeding human powers. No idea can substitute for this experience. And last but not least, leaving no trace. Our community respects the environment. We are committed to leaving no physical trace of our activities wherever we gather. We clean up after ourselves and endeavor, whenever possible, to leave such places in a better state than when we found them. The first thing I want to talk about are the 3 radicals. Radical inclusion, self-reliance, and self-expression. The word radical in the sense of these principles is that it is fundamental and foundational. The 3 radicals, therefore, are the building blocks for the other 7 principles. This trinity of radicals essentially represents the ideal individual and participant of Burning Man. The individual is capable of inclusion and including others, forming even open and inviting participatory groups. But by definition, a group is formed because it is focused on something, thus excluding everything that does not fit in the group's central locus. This paradoxically forms the group known as burners. The all-inclusive, exclusive group anybody can join, but spaces are limited. I know, like I said, it's a bit of a paradox, and believe me, those in the culture that have been talking about it since it was a thing have been talking about it since it was a thing. But let's not get bogged down with that for now. The most important of the radicals is in the central ingredient of this radical sandwich, self-reliance. The individual that is not self-reliant can neither participate in inclusion, nor can they express themselves. The exception being that they are expressing themselves so negatively that you've thought about dragging their tent into open camping while they're still sleeping in it. Which brings us to radical self-expression. You've probably got a lot of you-iness inside of you. That's because you're 100% made of you. The things you'll find out about yourself may only come in a form that only you can understand, but it may also be something you cannot easily express. While Burning Man is not only a laboratory and a playground for people to express themselves, it's also the world's biggest potluck of personal expression. And you'll find yourself with all kinds of other people who are also made of 100% of their version of you-iness to radically express with. Thus, the radical trinity is complete, and you can now effectively cooperate and participate to uphold the other 7 principles, which brings us to communal effort and civic responsibility. These 2 principles go together like burners and dust, or your camp gear and dust, or your bike and dust, or dust and dust. It's no coincidence then that in order to put forth an earnest attempt at upholding the foundations of Black Rock City, you're going to get dusty. That's right, communal effort and civic responsibility are constant calls to action. There's no shortage of people saying yes if you ask the question, can I help? Worst case scenario, the harshest rejection you'll receive is they will tell you to find someone with a funny sounding name who will put you to work. Likewise, it's not an uncommon sight you'll see there someone has abdicated personal responsibility over some chore or some event. That's where you come in. Politely, asking if they need a hand. Or thunderously, demanding to know the intricate workings of their gray water systems and precise moot patrolling schedules. You can do you on that one, and decide how to approach the situation yourself. Civic responsibility also falls upon you to uphold all local, state, and federal laws. Black Rock City is indeed really real. A more uncommon sight is that one of interpersonal aggression. If you ever witness confrontation, immediately find a ranger. Not only are rangers super trained to deal with all kinds of rare scenarios, but they'll show up in those super good looking outfits. In fact, rangers are super good at lots of things, and if you're ever unsure about your civic responsibilities or where you can put forth communal effort, they'll let you know and make you feel super about it. Moving on to gifting and decommodification, we come across two of the more intricate principles which are built off the first 5 we've covered so far. The easiest way to go about describing gifting is to just hack off what it is not. First off, gifting isn't bartering. It is a big misconception that commonly populates the question pool surrounding gifting, so I'll just say it again. Gifting is not bartering. It's not conditional that you must give something if you've been gifted. It's not conditional that you must get something if you've gifted someone. A gift does not have to be any actual thing. It can be in many and any form. The idea of a gift is the value is unconditional. In the words of some late important hippie whose name rhymes with Harry Larvey, the value of a gift, when rightly given and received, is unconditional. Nothing of equivalent value can be expected in return. This interaction should not be commodified. This brings us to the more complex idea of decommodification. On its basic premise, decommodification means if your stuff has logos from the default world on it, cover it up. It also means don't use the Burning Man associated stuff to profit in the default world. If you find someone willingly making transactions in terms of granting access to something, be it a physical good or just entrance to someplace, tell people in the Burning Man organization about it. You can also shame those people in public if you happen to be carrying a megaphone at the time. There's a massive amount of discussion to be held when it comes to artists making a living in this principle, and I'm not going to touch on it because there's probably many conversational hours to be had on the subject alone. Plus, I'm about to be interrupted anyway. But Fargonaut, you say. They sell coffee and ice at the burn. Isn't that against decommodification and gifting? Ha ha! That's why decommodification is a complex principle, I reply back ever so handsomely. The exchange of money for things like ice at Arctica and coffee at Center Camp isn't selling out. It's commodifying in. Decommodification isn't entirely about removing commerce itself. Rather, making sure the kind of commerce that takes place simultaneously views the context of the other values that affect our attitude towards commerce in our community. So long as the relationship creates value in terms of both commerce and community, it should be perceived as okay. Ice also makes for nicer times in the desert for everyone, and the commerce of beverage drives the community at Center Camp and maybe helps pay for some stuff that keeps your ticket prices down. Now you've got 7 principles so far. 3 that make you an excellent denizen of Black Rock City, 2 to give you a sense of purpose, and 2 to help you navigate all that complexity without even using money. Bringing us to our next 2 principles and great callers to action, participation and immediacy. For participation, the word radical is used in the definition of this principle, and it's not by some mistake. Burning Man is inherently participatory experience, so much so that you should consider this principle to be an ethic, because I guarantee your life will be so much better on and off playa if you're achieving being by doing. Participation is hearing those calls to action and jumping right on top of them, answering the calls to play, helping out along the way, maintaining your place of stay, generally feeling pretty okay, seizing the night or day, and having Rusted Root send you on your way. Immediacy is fine-tuning of your awareness, of you being you in the moments you find yourself in. This principle is pretty straightforward verbatim, but if I had to remix it, I would say that transformative changes arise from overcoming barriers that stand between us and our inner selves, those around us, in society, and at the burn and at large, all within realities we share on both the individual level and as a culture. So what should you do? Participate. When should you do it? Immediately! Now that you've got enough principles to start a baseball team, let's close out with the principle that should really be called the Platinum Rule, because it's the equivalent of treating someone better than you treat yourself. Leaving no trace, or leave no trace, is a principle guided by the previous 9 principles' logical conclusion. We are smitten with complete respect for our environment. We are committed to leaving no environmental impact wherever we gather, as we clean up after ourselves, and if at all possible, improve upon the state of the places we gather in the first place. Now, I've underlined this twice, and if you notice, the first line is a little softer than the other. This is because the only place we will leave a trace is in our memories. The friendships we make, the communities we collaborate with, the transformative changes within ourselves, and the things we learn along the way all leave a lasting trace on each and every one of us in the community. That being said, I underlined it more firmly the second time because you better be picking up poop if you see it. Trash tag was invented before the hashtag, and if you don't like it, go outside and pick up garbage anyway.